In the evening, a bustling second-tier city reveals a sense of impatience. Streets were bustling with traffic and the start of the nightlife allowed many young people to escape from their stuffy rooms and squander their time. Xiao was squatting on the roof of a two-story villa, the night breeze blowing past, giving him a feeling of coolness. Xiao was dressed in black, wearing a large black hood, hiding his figure in the darkness of the roof. This outfit, in the sweltering summer, even at night, would make people feel stuffy. But compared to his unfortunate experience, this was nothing. He had been waiting here for 2 hours. At Su Xiao's age, he should have been enjoying his time in university, but he gave up his studies 3 years ago due to hatred and began learning other skills, anatomy, combat, quick unlocking, and other knowledge. The long wait began. 2 hours later, a black luxury car slowly drove into the villa yard. The dull engine sound died down and the car door opened. A middle-aged man with a hint of drunkenness walked out of the car. Due to excessive drinking, the middle-aged man's steps were clearly a bit unsteady. Su Xiao, who was on the roof of the villa, picked up a long knife next to him. As the knife was unsheathed, the blade was black and hard to detect under the cover of night. Jumping down from the 6-meter-high roof, Su Xiao's agile arms grabbed the protruding diamond corner of the villa, slowing down his descent. As he landed smoothly, Su Xiao landed right in front of his enemy without any unnecessary words. The long knife in Su Xiao's hand cut through the air, and after a whimpering sound, it cut open the enemy's throat with one blow. Blood spurted out, and although Su Xiao tried hard to avoid it, his cuffs and back of his hand were still stained with blood. The drunken enemy, who had not yet understood what had happened, had already fallen to the ground. This kind of injury is no different from death, so Su Xiao immediately ran towards the less populated area. Out of the corner of his eye, Su Xiao saw a security guard in uniform. Although he was committing a crime, it didn't matter if he was witnessed on the spot. He hid his appearance very well, but in the next moment, Su Xiao felt a chill. The security guard actually pulled out a gun from his waist. The black and long gun was obviously equipped with a silencer. How could a security guard have a gun? Su Xiao didn't have time to think carefully. Behind him was a villa that was at least 10 faces wide, and the security guard was about 20 meters away from him. If he chose to escape, his back would be completely exposed to the enemy, making him a live target. When faced with danger, Su Xiao's first reaction was to solve the source of the danger, not to escape. Rushing forward, Su Xiao ran in an S shape, trying to avoid being shot as much as possible. Puff, 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 the silenced handgun made only a faint gunshot. Su Xiao had just rushed about 5 meters when he felt a numbness in his calf, followed by the same sensation in his chest. Su Xiao knew he had been shot. Although he was a revenger, he had never been shot before. A feeling of weakness spread throughout his body. Su Xiao was not afraid, just a little unwilling. His revenge had not been completed yet, and he had already fallen, and he had been killed by an unknown enemy. This was such a frustrating thing. With the last of his strength, Su Xiao threw the long knife in his hand. This knife was basically left to fate, but God seemed to sense Su Xiao's unwillingness and his unfair experience. After a few rapid spins in the air, the knife miraculously pierced into the chest of the guard holding the gun. Su Xiao, who had collapsed to the ground, had a smile on his face. The knife he had poisoned with a neurotoxin, and it was a mixed type. The guard who had been stabbed was bound to die. His consciousness began to blur, and Su Xiao felt a heavy blow to his head, and then everything before him went black. In his last remaining consciousness, Su Xiao vaguely heard, "Hunter, Reincarnation Paradise opens for you. Body transmission in progress, 10%, 50%, 100%, transmission completed." Detecting that the hunter's body has suffered a large amount of damage, awaiting repair. The hunter's consciousness has not awakened, the repair command is postponed, and the current survival state is maintained at the lowest level. The maintenance time is 10 minutes, beep. It is found that the hunter's talent is growth talent. The survival time is added 2 hours. In the darkness, several rows of light blue text floated in midair, emitting a faint glow. Underneath the light blue text, Su Xiao lay in the void, covered in blood. His fingers twitched, and Su Xiao woke up slowly. Upon waking up, Su Xiao was a bit dazed at first, but after recalling the black gun barrel, he immediately tried to stand up. A sharp pain came, and Su Xiao almost fainted again from the pain. With difficulty, he sat up. Su Xiao looked around, besides a few lines of blue glowing text, everything around was pitch black. Hunter, welcome to Reincarnation Paradise. A line of text appeared in front of Su Xiao out of thin air, but Su Xiao didn't look at the line of text, but started to check his injuries. His calf was pierced, the wound was peeling, and his fingers could easily reach inside. This bloody scene, Su Xiao just furrowed his brows, and had no other reaction. He had experienced scenes that were 10 times more brutal than this, so these couldn't make him flinch. The injury to his chest was even more severe, but regardless of the injury to his calf or chest, not a single trace of blood was flowing out. Am I not dead? He put his hand on his chest. Su Xiao felt his heart beating strongly. Hunter, you have not died. Are you willing to join Reincarnation Paradise? Here you can find everything you want. Su Xiao had noticed those suspicious texts a long time ago, but out of caution towards the unknown, he didn't pay attention to them. The situation now was a bit strange. He had suffered fatal injuries, but miraculously survived, and in front of him was a line of blood red numbers counting down. 1:35:10, 1:35:9, 1 hour, 35 minutes and 9 seconds, if Su Xiao hadn't guessed wrong. This was what those numbers meant, and the numbers were still counting down. This blood-red number gave Su Xiao a sense of unease, as if when the number reached 0, he would lose his life. Hunter, please communicate with Paradise as soon as possible to sign a contract, otherwise, you will die in 1 hour and 35 minutes. Sure enough, those numbers represented the time he could still survive. Su Xiao had suspected earlier that his injuries were too severe and he should have died long ago. Where is my knife? Su Xiao didn't care about the contract or Paradise, but asked the other party for his knife. That knife was the only memento left to him by his parents. It was said to be an officer's knife confiscated by his great-grandfather and had been passed down to his generation. Most real-world items cannot be brought into Paradise. Please sign the contract as soon as possible. Su Xiao was silent. The light blue text flickered. Perhaps it had never encountered a hunter like Su Xiao. Contract? Tell me about it. What do I need to give, and what can I get? The gradually decreasing survival time didn't leave Su Xiao much time to delay, and he felt that he seemed to have encountered some supernatural event, which caused some fluctuations in his heart. Su Xiao needed strength to take revenge, and supernatural events might bring extraordinary power along with great risks. By signing a contract, you will shuttle between various derivative planes to complete the tasks issued by Reincarnation Paradise and obtain the source of the world. The final reward will depend on the amount of source of the world. Reincarnation Paradise is omnipotent. A lot of text appeared, and Su Xiao read it carefully. Omnipotent? Can you resurrect the dead? All the light blue text suddenly froze in midair, then all disappeared. Given your identity as a hunter, no. The mysterious Reincarnation Paradise has been calling Su Xiao Hunter since the beginning. This title felt strange to Su Xiao because he hadn't signed the so-called contract. What does the title Hunter represent? Su Xiao's question triggered a significant response from the Reincarnation Paradise. Ordinary people become contractors after signing the contract, carrying out tasks for the Paradise and receiving rewards. The so-called hunters are contractors with special talents, which are more suitable for combat. While executing ordinary tasks, the Paradise will simultaneously issue hunting tasks to hunters to eliminate abnormal contractors. The number of inquiries has been exhausted. The Paradise will no longer answer any questions from the hunter. Please sign the contract or wait for death. All the lights faded, and it was pitch black around him. An antique-looking piece of parchment popped out in the void, hanging in mid-air. Su Xiao struggled to stand up and walk to the parchment. The parchment was full of strange symbols, and there was a large blank space at the bottom. Do you want to sign the contract? Su Xiao vaguely felt that if he signed this contract, his life would undergo earth-shattering changes. He had too much to do. Even if there was an abyss ahead, he had no choice but to jump. I agree. As soon as Su Xiao's words fell, his hand involuntarily lifted, and then his thumb pressed towards the blank space on the parchment. A sharp pain came from his fingertips, a touch of bright red blood stained the parchment, and the whole parchment turned pale red, exuding a faint smell of blood. The contract is established. Start repairing the hunter's injuries. A pale green light appeared around Su Xiao, clinging to his body. In just a few seconds, his injuries were completely healed. Injury repair completed, forcibly awakening the hunter's talent. Just as his body recovered, before Su Xiao could take a breath, a sharp pain came from all over his body. The pain came suddenly, causing all the blood vessels in Su Xiao's body to bulge. But Su Xiao's tolerance was beyond ordinary people. He just let out a muffled hum, and knelt on one knee. The pain came suddenly and faded just as quickly. Su Xiao sensed that something seemed to have been awakened inside him. That feeling was not abrupt, as if he had this ability all along, but he had never noticed it. In order to directly display the comprehensive qualities of the hunter, semidatization is activated. Warning: semidatization is an auxiliary combat ability. If vital organs such as the heart and brain are severely damaged, the hunter will still die. Please handle the derived plane carefully. The hunter's exclusive trial begins. If the trial cannot be completed, the Paradise will strip the hunter's identity and become an ordinary contractor. If the hunter dies during the task, the hunter will die completely. Paradise rule: everything will be exchanged at an equivalent price. Just as Su Xiao finished reading the text in front of him, he felt a darkness before his eyes and then lost consciousness. Transfer begins. When Su Xiao woke up again, he was already in a dilapidated house. The house was only about 10 square meters in size, with the roof half collapsed, and sunlight pouring directly in. There were a lot of cobwebs in the corner of the room, covered with dust. The windows and doors were gone, but there was no light coming in from around. All he could see was a pile of garbage, some of which had flowed into the room through the windows and doors. This dilapidated room was buried in a large pile of garbage, with the roof being the only exit. A pungent sour smell came, and just as Su Xiao was about to leave, a burning sensation came from his arm. A black tattoo in the shape of a sharp sword appeared on his forearm. The pale blue text appeared again, but this time it wasn't floating in the air, but directly in his line of sight. Even if the angle of view moved, the text was still static, as if it was embedded in his retina. The content of the text is as follows: Enter the world, One Piece world difficulty, LV.6. Hellworld source, 0% world brief, Big C, freedom, pirates, navy, world government, main task, assassinate the king of Goa kingdom, side task, none, warning, do not mention anything about paradise in this world. If the warning is ineffective, execution will be enforced. Tip, this world is a high-level, derived world, do not leave the Goa kingdom area, otherwise the world difficulty will greatly increase. Tip, because the hunter first entered the world, the language of this world is automatically mastered by the hunter. Deadline world, start, the text faded, and Xiao began to sort out the information he had learned. First of all, he came to a very mysterious place, called Reincarnation Paradise. The purpose of Reincarnation Paradise is unknown to him, but his purpose is clear, that is to gain power in Reincarnation Paradise. With power, he can take revenge. Secondly, it's about his current situation. He has come to the world of One Piece. Although he wants revenge, he also watches some anime to relax in his spare time. People can't always be tense. Based on Xiao's understanding of the One Piece world, this is a high-risk world. In the later stages, those strong men can even sink an island or single-handedly slaughter a country. Although he is proficient in some killing techniques, Xiao can only be regarded as an ordinary person here. In such a world full of non-human monsters, it is extremely difficult to move. From the word hell, in the world difficulty, one can guess the difficulty of this world. As for the task given at the end, Xiao is even more confused. Assassinate the king of Goa kingdom, only these simple words, without any other clues, just as Xiao was a little headache. A piece of information came from the sword-shaped tattoo on his arm. He can activate the brand with his consciousness. The so-called brand is the sword-shaped tattoo on his arm. This thing is very important and has many functions. Xiao tried to activate the brand, and he did it easily. A few lines of text appeared in front of him. Point 1, personal information. Point 2, task 3, saving space. Point 4, skills. Point 5, equipment, the rank is too low, other functions are not unlocked. Xiao now has no need for anything other than the first item and the second item, task. He urgently wants to know the specific content of the task. Judging from the performance of the Reincarnation Paradise earlier, it will not tolerate his task failure. Generally, failure means a dead end. What to be reduced to an ordinary contractor, there should be no such possibility at all. Although the contact was brief, Xiao sensitively sensed the cruelty of Reincarnation Paradise. Open the task option, the specific information of the task appears. Main task, assassinate the king of Goa kingdom, difficulty level, LV.3. Task introduction. Goa kingdom is located in the East Sea, ruling over nearby towns and villages, with Windmill Village and Kalubo Mountain nearby. Task information, use any method to kill the king of Goa kingdom, Philip Herbert, who is usually in the palace, and the assassination difficulty is high. Task deadline, within 72 hours, task reward, fully activate the hunter's identity. After reading the above information, Xiao finally understood who he was going to kill and where he was. No wonder there is so much garbage around. His current location should be that end of trash, near the Goa kingdom, the garbage mountain that was burned in the original story due to the arrival of the celestial dragons. The protagonist of the original story, Monkey D. Luffy, and important characters Ace and Sabo, lived on Kalubo Mountain in their childhood, and there was a group of bandits living on the mountain. He doesn't know what period it is now, whether the three brothers have set out to sea, if they are still young. As for the capital of the Goa kingdom, it is near Kalubo Mountain, next to the end of trash, where he is. The garbage around here is produced by the capital of the Goa kingdom. Thinking of these, Xiao was not in a hurry to leave. The end of trash was full of wandering refugees and was very dangerous. He still had to understand the situation before making plans. Close the task panel. Xiao opens the personal information. Personal information as follows: contractor number 13013. Name, Xiao level, LV.1. Every 10 levels constitute a rank. The level increase doesn't add any attribute enhancement, it corresponds with the world difficulty, task difficulty, etc. in Paradise. Health, 100%, mana, 60. Strength, 6 agility, 7 stamina, 5 intelligence, 6 charm, 3 luck, 1 note. The standard attributes for an adult male are 5 points, with luck at 1 point. Slaughter talent, Soul Eater, after killing the target, will permanently seize 1 to 15 points of mana. This talent can seize a maximum of 100 mana in each world. Personal information is for hunters to estimate their own strength, and it is irrelevant to the actual combat power. The attribute value will affect the physical fitness of the hunter, but the battle is not only determined by physical fitness, so hunters please be careful. After carefully reviewing his personal attributes several times, Xiao memorized them in his heart. His current level is LV.1. The role of the level is self-evident, it is equivalent to his authority in the Reincarnation Paradise. The world of One Piece he entered has a difficulty level of LV.6, while his level is only LV.1, which means he is in great danger in the world of One Piece. Under normal circumstances, Reincarnation Paradise will not send contractors to a world that is more than 5 levels higher. This all has to do with his hunter status. This so-called hunter status, what benefits it brings Xiao is still unclear, but the disadvantages are evident. That is danger, entering a LV.6 world, and then taking a LV.3 task, but he is only LV.1. This game seems a bit difficult. Moreover, according to the introduction of Reincarnation Paradise, he needs to help Reincarnation Paradise eliminate some abnormal contractors in other worlds in the future. This basically means that he is a natural enemy to most contractors. Even if Xiao agrees to complete the task together, other contractors will not agree. Once his identity is discovered, it will only lead to a united attack. Who can guarantee that Xiao's hunting mission does not include their numbers? As for the protection measures listed at the top, Xiao doesn't trust Reincarnation Paradise much, let alone the protection offered by Reincarnation Paradise. But it's not all bad news. His attributes are all superior to ordinary people. This is the result of his hard training. Although this kind of physical fitness doesn't mean much in the world of One Piece, it gives him a higher starting point. That Xiao's strength is not just the attributes shown, he also has a special ability, that is, he knows how to fight, and he dares to fight. Although he doesn't have the kind of wisdom that sees through everything, he has a heart that is not afraid of injury or death. It's not that he's not afraid at all, it's just that compared to ordinary people, his courage is stronger and he dares to do dangerous things. This is Xiao's capital for making a splash in Reincarnation Paradise. Sometimes, a brave heart is far more important than a strong body. So, let me see how dangerous this world of pirates really is. Xiao sprinted forward a few steps, stepped on the corner of the window, leaped up, stretched out his arms, grabbed the eaves of the roof, then exerted force with his arms, pulling his body upwards. His upper body poked out from the hole in the ceiling. Just as Xiao was about to check out the situation outside, a crisp sound came. Bang! It was a gunshot, a somewhat dull gunshot. Xiao made a judgment immediately, pulling his body back behind the wall, with his hands tightly gripping the eaves. Xiao slowly poked his head out to check the situation outside. Bang, 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 the sound of gunfire outside was continuous. After observing, Xiao judged that it should be two forces of the scrapyard fighting. Both sides had dozens of people and were in a mid-range gunfight. That Xiao noticed that the clothes of both sides were very worn out, and they were all thin and yellow. They should all be refugees from the scrapyard. Toby, this territory is ours. What do you mean? We are all pitiful people, scavenging. Do you want to kill us all? The gunfire subsided a bit, and the two sides began to argue loudly. Your territory. I now have more than a dozen guns. From now on I have the final say here. When I save enough money, I will take people out to sea, then I will be a pirate. Roger, put down your weapon, I'll give you a chance to surrender. Toby's words were interrupted by a gunshot, and he pulled his head back behind the pile of trash that in the dilapidated house. Xiao could just see the man who was speaking. He was a big bearded man, standing behind a pile of trash with a grim smile on his face. It seemed that he was not willing to accept the surrender of the other party, but wanted to wipe them out. This Toby, unlike the thin and yellow refugees, was tall and muscular. Xiao sighed in his heart. He finally felt how dangerous a LV.6 world was. If he had rashly gone out earlier, he would definitely have been shot into a honeycomb, and this was just the beginning. It should be more dangerous later. Just as Xiao was waiting for the two groups to disperse, a nimble figure suddenly jumped into the house, where he was from the roof. Phew, that was close. I finally found a safe place. The newcomer was speaking halfway when they saw Xiao, who was clinging to the wall. The other party was about to speak, but Xiao had already let go of the hand holding the eaves, and his body fell freely. After landing, Xiao lowered his body, pushed off the ground with his feet, a few dry leaves splashed up, and he pounced on the other party like a nimble cheetah. The other party was just about to explain something, but it was too late. Xiao first punched the other party in the lower abdomen. He could clearly feel the other party's soft lower abdomen being pushed in by his fist. The other party bent over in pain, just about to scream, but Xiao's palm had already covered the other party's mouth and nose. Only a muffled hum came out. That's not all. While Xiao's hand was covering the other party's mouth, his other hand was flat, his hand was like a blade, and his fingertips pointed viciously at the other party's chest. Thud. The unique dull sound of a heavy blow to the chest came. Xiao could feel the other party's body soften, and the fear in their eyes as they slumped down. They could only make a soft murmuring sound when his fingertips hit the other party's heart. Xiao felt a very soft touch. A woman? The reason he did this was because he couldn't determine whether the other party was an enemy or a friend, so it was better to subdue them first. No, don't hurt me. The voice of the other party was as fine as a mosquito. Xiao looked up and down at the newcomer. The uneven black color, the face full of dust, but the cheeks not covered by dust were very white. The linen clothes were very large. It could be seen that the other party's body was very thin, and the age was not big. Who are you? Xiao could guess the other party's purpose. It should be to seek refuge. I'm Mia, I really mean no harm, please don't hurt me. Mia's voice was very small, being hit in the heart. It was already a strong constitution for Mia not to faint. she wouldn't have the ability to move freely in a short time. Don't make a sound, or I'll kill you. If his life was in danger, Su Xiao would kill, he still had a deep hatred to avenge. Gulp. Mia, who was only 15 or 16 years old, swallowed. Okay, I just want to take refuge, I won't make a sound. Suddenly, Mia felt that staying with this man in front of her was not safer than outside. The gunfire outside gradually stopped, and the chaotic battle should end soon. Su Xiao was waiting. As soon as the chaotic battle outside was over, he would go out immediately. Although this was dangerous, it was also an opportunity. He needed weapons very much, starting with empty hands, not to mention a decent weapon. There wasn't even a wooden stick near Su Xiao. The sound of gunfire gradually subsided, replaced by the moans of the wounded, hidden in the shadows. Su Xiao felt that the timing was ripe. The muscular man, Toby, and his gang had successfully repelled the attacking refugees. The refugees' fight was devoid of any strategy. After a round of chaotic shooting, they started to chase aimlessly. Emerging from the house, Su Xiao landed smoothly, immediately crouching low. In front of him was a continuous mountain of garbage, green smoke rising from it, and a putrid smell permeating the air. Ignoring this, Su Xiao's eyes were fixed on a gun lying on the ground in the distance. It was a short-barreled flintlock gun. Despite its worn-out appearance, it was still a lethal weapon. The owner of the gun was already dead, his throat half-blasted by a stray bullet, a gruesome sight to behold. Perhaps because of the concealed location of the death, Toby's gang hadn't noticed this gun. Otherwise, in the weapon-scarce, junk terminal, they would never have left this short-barreled flintlock gun lying there. Crouching low, Su Xiao began to approach the gun. However, at that moment, a gaunt refugee had already rushed to the short-barreled flintlock gun. His dirty hand reached out for the short-barreled flintlock gun. Su Xiao frowned, not because the other party had taken the initiative, but because he was afraid that the noise would attract the attention of the two forces. Picking up a fist-sized stone, Su Xiao threw it with all his might. The stone, carrying a strong force, hit the refugee's arm hard. Bang! The refugee staggered and let out a scream. Su Xiao rushed behind him, sidestepped his body, and kneed the refugee's spine hard. The refugee bent forward, spitting out a mouthful of sour water. Even after such a heavy blow, the refugee only staggered forward 2 steps but didn't fall. Su Xiao's pupils constricted. Just how strong were the physical attributes of the people in the One Piece world? This was just a refugee with the worst physical attributes, but he couldn't think about that now. Su Xiao noticed that the refugee was already showing a ferocious look, like an enraged beast. His mouth full of yellow teeth was clenched, and his masseter muscles bulged. This ferocious appearance would make an ordinary person instinctively retreat, but Su Xiao was different. He had combat experience and knew that if he ran away at this time, his exposed back would be shot. With a clenched fist, Su Xiao punched the refugee's lower jaw before he could recover. There are many blood vessels in the human lower jaw. If suddenly hit hard, it can lead to insufficient blood supply to the brain, followed by insufficient oxygen supply, causing short-term unconsciousness. Bang! A few blood-stained yellow teeth flew far away. After taking a full punch from Su Xiao, the refugee fell backward stiffly, like a falling wooden stick. Ordinary people would faint for a few seconds after being hit in the lower jaw, but the natives of the One Piece world had mysteriously strong bodies, so Su Xiao turned the refugee's body over and aimed another punch at his neck. With a dull thud, the refugee's life or death was unknown. Su Xiao grabbed the short-barreled flintlock gun on the ground, and immediately a line of text appeared in front of him. Before Su Xiao could check it, a large group of people were running from a distance. They were Toby's forces who had failed the chase. Su Xiao felt a chill in his heart. If he was discovered at this time, he might not even have the chance to speak and would be shot into a sieve. These people were all bloodthirsty. Looking around, Su Xiao's face looked a bit ugly. His position was surrounded by towering mountains of garbage. These garbage mountains formed a ring, blocking all sides. Su Xiao didn't dare to climb the unstable garbage mountain. The garbage mountain could collapse at any time, and no one knew what was buried in it. If he was unlucky and was stabbed by a sharp object, he would either die from excessive blood loss or from infection in this harsh environment. So Su Xiao could only go back into the dilapidated house, where the girl named Mia was looking at him with fear. This time, without Su Xiao's reminder, Mia took the initiative to speak. I won't say anything. Noticing that she had spoken, Mia quickly put her hands over her mouth, her eyes glancing at the short-barreled flintlock gun in Su Xiao's hand. Not long after Su Xiao entered the house, noisy voices came from outside. After a round of cursing, it gradually quieted down outside. It seemed that those people had come back to scavenge for resources, but judging from their angry voices, their harvest was obviously not good. Su Xiao breathed a sigh of relief and began to check the prompt that had appeared earlier. Obtained, worn flintlock gun, white, worn flintlock gun, white, origin, One Piece, Leopold workshop durability, 6/30 bullet capacity, 4/6. Rapid-fire flintlock gun is a unique technology in the One Piece world. Attack power, 213, calculated based on distance, equipment. Requirement, 1 point of strength to use, more than 3 points of strength to use flexibly. Rating, 3. Note, the rating of white equipment is from 1 to 10, and white equipment with a rating of 10 will be marked rare and have special attributes. Introduction: this is a poorly maintained flintlock gun, which has caused its high rating of 9 points to drop to 3 points. Please use it carefully, as the next shot may be its last shot, and also your last shot. Price: 150 Paradise coins. This item is a chance pickup item and cannot be taken out of the One Piece world. The hunter has obtained equipment for the first time. Starting equipment grade introduction. Equipment is divided into white, green, blue. Insufficient rank to obtain the following information. The hunter needs to explore on his own. The hunter has come into contact with Paradise coins for the first time. Starting Paradise coin explanation. Paradise coins can be used to trade with Reincarnation Paradise or other contractors. This is the only universal currency in Reincarnation Paradise. Warning: please use every Paradise coin carefully, because it is your capital for survival or becoming stronger. Xiao nodded thoughtfully. It seemed that the Reincarnation Paradise had a strict system, not only marking the performance of various weapons but also having a complete currency mechanism. Although Xiao knew that he would face many dangers in the future, he was somewhat looking forward to it. He was looking forward to how the Reincarnation Paradise could make him stronger. Although he didn't know how to become stronger yet, there must be such a method in the Reincarnation Paradise, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to complete the more difficult tasks in the future. After carefully checking the worn flintlock gun in his hand, Xiao showed a smile. Finally, he had a weapon. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel at ease in this dangerous world. But compared to firearms, Xiao preferred to use cold weapons, such as knives, those narrow, extremely sharp long knives. If he had his match knife with him, Xiao's combat power would increase by at least 50%. He had understood the basic situation, and now he needed to prepare to complete the mission. The mission time limit was only 72 hours. Xiao didn't want to try what would happen if the mission failed, so he had to devote himself entirely to the completion of the mission. But wanting to assassinate a king of a country was definitely not a simple matter, so he needed some other methods. At least he had to be able to get close to that king. The idea of secretly infiltrating the palace had never occurred to Xiao, because in the One Piece world, there was something called observation. Haki. According to Xiao's memory, this king should be related to the world nobles, the celestial dragons, and it was not impossible for a master proficient in observation Haki to appear around him. Otherwise, with Xiao's assassination ability, the difficulty of assassinating a king would not be LV.3. In the real world full of surveillance equipment, Xiao was able to carry out his revenge plan, let alone in the technologically backward One Piece world, but it's too early to think about these things now. The most important thing is to understand where he is. The Reincarnation Paradise doesn't have a map function, everything depends on his own exploration. Xiao's gaze fell on the girl hiding in the corner. She lived in the junk terminal and must know it well. When she noticed Xiao's gaze, Mia curled up. What are you going to do? The girl's voice trembled slightly, with a hint of a sob. She had always hidden her gender, because in the junk terminal, being a woman was a dangerous thing. Are you hungry? Xiao squatted in front of the girl, a gentle smile on his face, but his eyes were slightly cold. He was not a kind person. Hatred had long wiped out the kindness in his heart. Mia nodded, but then immediately shook her head. In the junkyard, one thing was the scarcest: food. Those refugees who only relied on scavenging for a living were basically on the brink of starvation. Xiao took out a few compressed biscuits from his arms. These were emergency rations he carried with him. He had observed that there was a forest far away from the junkyard. He had a gun in his hand and wouldn't worry about food. Mia took a piece of compressed biscuit with some trepidation, as she had never seen this kind of food before. Under Xiao's guidance, Mia unwrapped the compressed biscuit and took a careful bite. Delicious. The starving girl began to eat ravenously. You're Mia, right? Take me out of here, and these biscuits are all yours. Mia, who had finished the compressed biscuit in her hand, stared straight at the few biscuits in Xiao's hand, swallowing her saliva. Okay, but you can't hurt me. Xiao didn't answer her, but instead rummaged in the shabby house, with Mia, who had recovered somewhat, following closely behind him. Where are you going? You're not a resident of the junkyard, are you? Xiao suddenly stopped, his eyes flashing coldly. He threw a biscuit on the ground and crushed it with his foot. Take me out of here, don't ask anything else. If Mia showed any abnormalities, the hand that Xiao held the gun in would aim at Mia's forehead. Mia was startled by Xiao's action and took a few steps back. Okay, alright. Mia didn't dare to say anything more and quickly walked ahead. Take me to the entrance of the Goya Kingdom. Xiao vigilantly scanned his surroundings. He occasionally saw refugees with murderous eyes. Those refugees immediately withdrew their greedy eyes when they noticed the gun in Xiao's hand. Recalling the information he got from the anime, Xiao began to think about his next move. The so-called junkyard was actually a large garbage dump. The Goya Kingdom had dumped a large amount of domestic waste outside the city, which led to the present situation. Those refugees with murderous eyes were originally residents of the Goya Kingdom. These people either committed serious crimes or offended the nobles, and were then driven out here. The garbage decomposed and produced a kind of green smoke with toxins, which spread in the junkyard and constantly eroded the lives of the refugees. The most obvious manifestation was that Su Xiao's life value had dropped from 100% to 98%. There were no doctors or food in the junkyard. Crime and disease spread here. This was a lawless area where everything was based on the strength of power. Through Mia's guidance, Su Xiao quickly left the junkyard and came to a high wall. The towering wall made of black stone stood tall, and a small city gate appeared in Su Xiao's sight. I can only take you this far. The Goya kingdom has laws. Refugees can't enter the city. Once found, they will be executed. Although Mia was talking to Su Xiao, her eyes were always on the compressed biscuit in Su Xiao's hand. Su Xiao threw the compressed biscuit to Mia and ignored her. Mia also ran away directly. She led Su Xiao only because of the temptation of food, and there was no other reason. The city gate of the Goya kingdom was wide open, and there were a few guards standing on both sides of the gate. This was just a side door, for the convenience of dumping garbage. Although the guards seemed lazy, cold lights flashed in their eyes from time to time. These guards must kill people regularly, killing those who intended to break into the city. Su Xiao hid to one side and didn't rush into the city. He was waiting for the right moment. It was impossible to fight hard with those guards. The residents of the pirate world were all unusually strong. Mia, a young girl, could recover normally in a short time after being hit hard by him. This made Su Xiao vigilant. Su Xiao guessed that the attributes of those guards were at least above 10 points, and possibly even higher. 1 hour, 2 hours, until 3 hours later, it was already noon. The temperature rose rapidly, and the weather became hot. The opportunity Su Xiao was waiting for finally appeared. A carriage full of domestic waste drove out of the city. The pungent smell of decay spread far away. The guards didn't even look at the carriage, but subconsciously retreated a few steps. Gentlemen, do you need a routine check? The cart driver stopped the carriage, somewhat afraid of the guards. Get out of here, it stinks. The guard waved his palm impatiently, showing no intention of checking at all. Su Xiao, who saw this scene from a distance, raised his eyebrows and quickly followed the carriage. When the carriage went deep into the garbage mountain and found an open space to dump the garbage, the previously submissive cart driver suddenly had a dagger around his waist. The law of the jungle was the rule of the junkyard. Lighting a cigarette to mask the smell, the cart driver picked up a shovel and began to clean the carriage full of stains. When the cart driver was busy sweating, Su Xiao, like a wild cat, quietly came behind the cart driver. Just as Su Xiao was about to knock out the cart driver, he stepped on a half-broken glass cup under his feet. Crack! A crisp sound came, and the cart driver's body shook. Su Xiao was also startled. In this dirty and messy junkyard, there was a thick layer of garbage under his feet, which was very soft to step on, and he couldn't detect anything under his feet at all. But at this moment, the arrow was on the string, and he had to send it, so Su Xiao directly pounced on it. The cart driver was not a good person either. He turned around and pulled out the dagger from his waist and stabbed it directly at Su Xiao. The cart driver's ferocious expression made Su Xiao understand that the other party wanted his life. Su Xiao's eyes began to turn cold. In this mission world, it was either you die or I die. Being merciful to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. Raising the flintlock gun in his hand, Su Xiao aimed the muzzle at the cart driver's head. If it were an ordinary person being pointed at with a gun, they would definitely stop or retreat immediately. But this cart driver was different. He actually rushed faster. Su Xiao pulled the trigger expressionlessly. The hammer behind the gun body hit the flint, and sparks splashed out. The gunpowder in the gun chamber was ignited, and a large amount of gunpowder was ignited in the small space, bursting out a strong kinetic energy. With the fire and smoke overflowing, the bullets in the gun chamber were ejected. Bang! Thick smoke rose, and a pungent smell of gunpowder spread. A lead bullet directly entered the cart driver's skull. The cart driver's forward body suddenly stopped and was directly knocked back 2 meters away. After a couple of twitches, he died. Prompt: you have killed a black market merchant. Your talent, Soul Eater, is activated, permanently increasing your mana by 5 points, with a current mana of 65 points. You got a treasure chest, White. This is your first kill. Storage space is opened, and the storage space can be upgraded in size using Paradise coins after returning to the Reincarnation Paradise. The prompt from the Reincarnation Paradise let Su Xiao know that this was not a cart driver at all, but a black market merchant. He must have been doing some kind of trade in the junkyard using the identity of a cart driver. After the black market merchant died, a wooden box floated above his corpse. The box was entirely white and only palm-sized. Su Xiao tried to pick up the wooden box floating in midair. Although it was only palm-sized, it was heavy to hold. Treasure chest, White, open/do not open. Su Xiao did not open the treasure chest, but put the treasure chest and the old flintlock gun into the storage space. With a thought, the old flintlock gun appeared in his hand. Su Xiao was very satisfied with the newly appeared storage space. This was a very practical function. If he used this ability well, it would be of great help to him in completing his tasks. This place was not safe, so Su Xiao did not choose to open the treasure chest. In case the treasure chest opened and gave him a golden light, he would be in danger. Now, the most important thing is to enter the capital city of the Goya kingdom. Su Xiao took off his jacket and put on the clothes of the black market merchant. After hesitating for a moment, Su Xiao directly fell on the ground in the water. The smell of filth came, and his clothes and cheeks were all stained with a large amount of dirty water, making it impossible for people to see his face clearly. Sitting in front of the carriage, Su Xiao clumsily controlled the horse and moved towards the city. At this time, he held a dagger in his hand, which was the dagger of the black market merchant, but this dagger was somewhat different from what he imagined. When he acquired the old flintlock pistol, Su Xiao received a lot of prompts. However, the dagger he now held in his hands came with no prompts, no specific information, and no indication of whether it could be sold. This made Su Xiao speculate that when he received the old flintlock pistol, there was a factor of luck involved, but it could also have been deliberately arranged by the Reincarnation Paradise. This suggested that he could obtain weapons, but at the same time, he would have to take some risks. This should be the rule of the Reincarnation Paradise. The dagger he now held clearly did not fall into this category. The dagger was very sharp, and he could use it, but he could not bring it out of the pirate world, nor could he exchange it for paradise coins. This was also a matter of course. If anything could be sold for paradise coins, then the currency mechanism of the Reincarnation Paradise would be nothing more than a joke. Driving the somewhat unruly horse, Su Xiao gradually approached the city gate, and the guards were now in his sight. Suddenly having a new master, this old horse was obviously a bit disobedient, which made Su Xiao somewhat embarrassed. He had never controlled a horse before, but the guards were right in front of him, and he had no room for retreat. He pulled the bridle in his hand, and the horse snorted and stopped in place. Su Xiao voluntarily stopped to accept the inspection. Based on his guess, the inspection would be more relaxed when leaving the city, but entering the city would not be that simple. Several guards came forward, their attitudes seemed lazy, but their eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. "What's the matter? Why are you returning to the city so early today?" The familiarity of the guards made Su Xiao's hairs stand on end. These guards might know the identity of the black market merchant, and they might even have a relationship of interest. This made things a bit difficult. "Sir, I was robbed by Toby's forces just after leaving the city today, ugh. Su Xiao's voice was very vague, and he also had a fit of dry heaving. His voice was different from that of the coachman, so he did it on purpose. With the foul smell of the sewage on his clothes, the guards did not suspect him and even avoided him. "What? Toby? Are they looking for death? Even you dare to rob, don't they know your identity?" The guard in front of Su Xiao was clearly a bit angry, but another guard next to him said, "Boss, Toby has been expanding his power recently. According to my informant, Toby just wiped out Roger's forces. Now, except for the Balsam Pirate Group, no other forces in the waste terminal surpass Toby. So just let it go. What about the money?" The guards looked at each other, and although they were unwilling, they had no choice but to accept the fact that Toby was hiding in the waste terminal. Forget it. Next time if this happens, you don't have to come back. Just live in the waste terminal." Su Xiao pretended to nod obediently, but his eyes were extremely calm. The more critical the moment, the calmer one must be. Many failures occur because of complacency before success. Su Xiao drove the horse and the old brown horse reluctantly moved forward. Just as Su Xiao was about to leave, a guard's shout came from behind. "Carlos, wait." The shout made Su Xiao's pupils contract, but he quickly regained his composure. "Your nephew's matter has been arranged. Bring enough sincerity, and you can report to the guard team today." The guard raised one hand high, rubbing his thumb and index finger together. The so-called sincerity referred to money. Su Xiao nodded hurriedly, pretending to thank, but instead, he started dry heaving again. "Go away, it's so smelly. Even from this distance, I can smell it." Su Xiao wouldn't miss such a good opportunity. He picked up the horse whip on the side and whipped the old horse's buttocks. With a pop, the old horse let out a mournful cry and its pace noticeably quickened. He had successfully infiltrated the Goya kingdom's capital city. Although he had safer methods to infiltrate the capital, those required time, and he did not have much time now. Moreover, from the brief conversations of the guards, he had obtained a lot of useful information. First, the current time point was before the protagonist monkey D. Luffy set sail in the original story, or even before Luffy was born. The basis for this judgment was the Balsam Pirate Group mentioned by the guard. If Su Xiao remembered correctly, the Balsam Pirate Group was the pirate group that fought with the young Luffy, Ace, and others in a big fire in the original story. In the original story, the Balsam Pirate Group was used by the king of the Goya kingdom to ignite the waste terminal and was then abandoned to fend for itself in the big fire. Secondly, there was a very unexpected gain. Perhaps this gain was the key to Su Xiao's successful completion of his mission. A sentence from the guard just now made Su Xiao overjoyed, which was, "Your nephew's matter has been arranged. Bring enough sincerity, and you can report to the guard team today." It seemed that this was a deal made by the deceased black market merchant and the guard, using money to buy a job in the guard team. If Su Xiao impersonated the other party's nephew and entered the guard team, it meant that he was one step closer to his assassination target. Su Xiao drove the horse carriage on the streets of the capital of the Goya kingdom. Since he had just entered the outer layer of the capital, this was a residential area for the common people. The streets of the common people's area were relatively clean, and the sides of the streets were full of street vendors. Large groups of common people leisurely walked on the streets, making the entire city bustling. But there were also some common people with worried faces and hurried steps. These common people, the only difference between them and the refugees outside the wall was that they would not starve, but they also struggled on the edge of subsistence. The pirate world was in a turbulent era, filled with wars and pirates running around, so the living conditions of the common people were relatively poor. Walking on the bustling street, Su Xiao felt as if he was in another world. It seemed that this was not a task world, but a real world. The people here were all human beings with blood and flesh, not so-called NPCs. From the guards he had encountered, it could be seen that their vigilance was not low. If it weren't for Su Xiao's thorough preparation and quick response, he might have been exposed. I end the task world, never underestimate anyone. Su Xiao warned himself in his heart, but now the most important thing was to find a place to clean himself and to open the treasure chest, white, he had obtained earlier. He needed to utilize all the resources he could. Su Xiao, who was only at level 1, was having a hard time in this level 6, nightmare difficulty world. The scorching sun was high in the sky, burning the earth. The high temperature of 30 degrees had gradually reduced the number of pedestrians on the streets. Su Xiao, braving the scorching sun, walked on the street. The pedestrians near him frowned and looked at him with some disgust. The carriage had been dealt with by Su Xiao, and the horse had been sold at a low price. After counting the banknotes in his hand, Su Xiao sighed. This was a currency called belly. He got 100,000 belly from selling the horse. It sounded like a lot, but in reality, it was only equivalent to the purchasing power of 6,000 RMB. Please don't overestimate this 100,000 belly, its purchasing power is far below expectation. Su Xiao had already tried it. Buying a decent set of clothes would require 8,000 belly, and a full meal would probably cost 900 belly. His eyes swept around, and when he found no one around, Su Xiao slowly walked to a house. This seemed like a random choice, but in fact, he had been observing this house for a long time. Although the house was not very tidy, there were no climbing plants on the walls, which indicated that the house was inhabited and the facilities were intact. The fine dust on the doorknob indicated that the owner of the house did not often return to the house, but only occasionally. This was his ideal choice for temporary lodging. The reason why he didn't choose to live in places like inns or taverns was that those places were mixed with all kinds of people and it was very easy to cause unnecessary trouble. He came to the world of pirates to complete the task. Now he only has 68 hours left for the task deadline. Except for the needs of the task, he will not have too much contact with people. Too much contact with people of unknown origin equals trouble equals unknown danger. Once again confirming that there was no one around, Su Xiao took out some simple lock-picking tools. Click, click, click. The door opened in response. Su Xiao had learned lock-picking skills, and the simple locks in the pirate world were just child's play for him. As if walking into his own home, Su Xiao entered the house and then closed the door tightly. After entering the house, as he expected, there was no one in the room. This was a house of over 100 square meters. There was a photo hanging on the wall. In the photo, there was a man and a woman and a little girl of a few years old. From the sincere smile of the woman, you could see that this was a very happy family. Su Xiao quickly took off his clothes and headed straight for the bathroom. Although his endurance was astonishing, the stench on his body also made him feel a bit nauseous. Clean water flowed down from his head, washing away the stains and stench on his body. After changing into a new set of clothes, Su Xiao felt refreshed. Sitting on the sofa, a white treasure chest suddenly appeared in Su Xiao's hand. Is the treasure chest opened? He chose to open it, and the treasure chest in his hand opened silently. There was no grandeur, and even no sound was made. You have opened the treasure chest and obtained the following items. Belly 500,000 inch, Captain Rowan's recommendation letter of the city gate guard. Paradise coin 100 pieces, only 3 items were obtained. The harvest was not rich, but it was not bad. After all, this was just a white treasure chest. According to the item level of the Reincarnation Paradise, the white treasure chest was the lowest level treasure chest. He first put away the belly, he didn't need this thing for now. Su Xiao picked up that letter. Captain Rowan's recommendation letter of the city gate guard. Quality, white, type, trigger type item, rating, 5. Introduction, this is a passionate recommendation letter. Captain Rowan abused his power and recommended a bully from the windmill array as a member of the guard team. With this letter, anyone can become a member of the guard team, provided that you are a male and have enough belly. After reading the introduction of the letter in his hand, Su Xiao showed a happy expression. This was exactly what he wanted. Since he couldn't assassinate the king directly, he at least had to meet him. The task difficulty of the nightmare level world was not something that could be solved by brute force. Su Xiao put all the items into the storage space and left the house directly. First, he found a restaurant and had a full meal. Then he started to pay attention to the patrolling guards on the street. The so-called guard team should be patrolling the streets and punishing some petty thieves. Although the power was not great, it was still a power department under the banner of the Goya Kingdom. After following several guards, Xiao quickly found the location of the guard headquarters. It was a two-story office building with two lazy guards standing at the door. Xiao had a recommendation letter in his hand, so he walked up directly. "Halt, this is the guard team, you can't just barge in." A young guard was rude. After seeing Xiao's civilian outfit, his tone was somewhat arrogant. "I am a new guard." Xiao was just about to say his name, but immediately thought that the name Xiao was a bit out of place in the world of pirates. With quick thinking, Xiao continued to speak. "I am a new guard, White Knight." The young guard was stunned and looked Xiao up and down. "White Knight? I haven't heard about any new people. You're not trying to sneak in, Lise. Remember what the captain said before, don't ask too many questions. White Knight, come with me." The other guard, who was a bit older, glared at the young guard and then took Xiao into the guard headquarters behind him. The young guard glared at Xiao resentfully and muttered something, such insignificant characters. Of course, Xiao didn't bother to pay attention to them. Following the older guard, he came to the front of an office. Cough, cough. The older guard straightened up and tidied up his appearance. He was just about to knock on the door when a panting sound came from the room. Xiao and the older guard looked at each other and understood what was happening in the room. The older guard put down his hand and stood quietly to one side. It was obviously inappropriate to knock on the door at this time as it would disturb the older guard's superior. Xiao and the older guard moved to one side. He took out a box of cigarettes from his arms and handed one to the older guard. Snap. The cigarette was lit and the two chatted in the corridor. Although it was just a cigarette, it could establish some unreliable friendship, so why not? "You're really lucky to have the top looking out for you. Don't worry, there's already been a heads up about you joining the guard team, there's absolutely no problem. By the way, my name is Hank, from now on we're colleagues." Xiao smiled modestly, but there was no change in his eyes. "My name is White Knight, please take care of me." As Xiao spoke, he stuffed the remaining cigarettes into Hank's jacket pocket. He was already considering whether the guard in front of him was of any use. He currently knew nothing about the situation in the royal city, and the other party could be very useful. Hank's smile on his face was obviously more pleasant. Just then, a short growl came from the room. Both of them knew that it was time. Hank waited a few minutes, then knocked on the door. "Who is it? Come in." A rough voice came from the office. With a sycophantic smile, Hank pushed open the office door. "Boss, it's me, Hank." Sue followed him into the office. "Is that Hank? Good, you didn't disturb my mood. What's up?" In the office, a bare-chested muscular man sat. His shiny bald head and ferocious aura made it clear that he was no weakling. "This is the newcomer, Sue, recommended by that one. Here is the recommendation letter." The muscular man glanced at Sue, casually flipped through the letter, and then tore it up. The original price was 200,000 belly, but a big event is going to happen recently, and the wind is tight, so at least 400,000 belly. Sue's face was still full of smiles. He was still weak, so he had to hide his true emotions for now. Even though he really wanted to shoot the muscular man and ask him how much belly it was, he directly took out 400,000 belly and handed it to the muscular man without a word. Sue's straightforward style made the muscular man raise his eyebrows, worthy of that side's people, very generous. "From now on, you are a member of the guard team. Remember to call me boss, or sir." Sue was still smiling, but his smile gave off a weird feeling. "All right, boss." He successfully joined the guard team, which was a big step forward in his mission to assassinate the king. Hank, standing aside, kept his head down, his eyes fixed on the ground as if there was something fascinating on it. In fact, it wasn't the case. Hank was expressing an attitude, implying that he didn't see his boss taking a bribe. From this incident, one could see how chaotic the atmosphere of the pirate world was. As long as you had money, you could probably buy even higher positions. But this was good news for Sue. Belly wasn't very important to him. What he lacked most now was time, and any problem that could be solved with belly was not a problem at all. Prompt, the hunter has joined the guard team, causing a minor change in the plot and gaining 2.1% of the world source. After leaving the office, Sue received the standard equipment of the guard team, a uniform, and a matchlock gun. In the warehouse, Sue looked at the simple matchlock gun in his hand somewhat speechlessly, and turned his gaze to Hank. "Hank, can I change to another weapon?" Hank showed a difficult expression. They are all designated supplies. I also." His stuttering tone made Sue understand that the guy in front of him was asking for a favor. Without a word, Sue stuffed 30,000 belly into Hank's pocket. Hank's expression changed, and his face was full of smiles. "We're all colleagues. If there's a problem, we can discuss it. You can choose the weapon yourself, but you can only choose one. This is a rule that no one can change." Sue put down the matchlock gun in his hand and started looking around in the warehouse. There were all kinds of weapons here. Soon, his gaze locked onto a long knife. The knife was about a meter long, with a blade width of about 3 centimeters. The curvature of the blade was very small. Although it wasn't as good as Sue's own knife, it was still a decent weapon. This is it. Sue picked up the knife and sheathed it. As soon as he touched the long knife, the Reincarnation Paradise immediately gave a prompt, hey, you can take other weapons, but not this knife. Hank's expression cooled down as if he hadn't received the 30,000 belly at all. What did you say? Sue held the long knife in his hand, turned his head to look at Hank, his eyes flashing coldly. If he kept giving in, others would think he was weak and easy to bully. Hank noticed Sue's gaze and was startled. A chill rose in his heart. This guy has killed people, and not just one. Hank struggled internally. He wanted to have a falling out with Sue on the spot, but Sue, who was holding a sharp knife, made Hank very wary. Hank, don't worry about these things. We are friends, aren't we? Sue pointed the hilt of the knife at Hank's chest. Either take the money and shut up, or Sue would kill Hank on the spot. There were only these two choices because the long knife in his hand was of great help to him in completing his mission and things that he had already gotten. Sue would not give up just because of a little threat. Sue believed that even if he killed Hank, as long as he bribed the muscular man with enough money, the other party would turn a blind eye. This matter, only you and I know. Let's consider this knife as a token of our friendship. Hank patted Sue on the shoulder affectionately. He compromised, and the tense atmosphere in the warehouse dissipated. I just arrived in the capital today and need to understand some things, so I'm considering you as my friend. Sue sighed inwardly. This was just an ordinary guard, and it was so difficult to deal with. What kind of enemies would he encounter when he got close to the king? This challenging feeling made Sue's heartbeat gradually quicken, and his blood boiled in his body. He began to like this feeling. The warlike factor in his body was gradually being awakened. The reason Sue was so tough was also due to a reason. When he touched the long knife earlier, the Reincarnation Paradise gave a prompt. Obtain /dragon flash, white, rare, origin, 1 piece, iron furnace blacksmith shop durability, 35/40-5, this weapon has been severely damaged, durability -5. Attack power, 516, calculated based on the strength of the slash, equipment requirements, 2 points of strength to use, more than 5 points of strength to use flexibly, rating, 10, note, the rating of white equipment is from 1 to 10. White equipment with a rating of 10 will be marked as rare and have special properties added. Additional properties, Dragon's Majesty, when holding this weapon, will cause a shock effect on the enemy. Shock effect, reducing the enemy's momentum. Introduction, this was the sword of the Dragon Slayer swordsman, Ryoma when he was young, but it was severely damaged, and its grade dropped after recovery. Since Ryoma obtained the black sword, Autumn Water, this weapon has always been placed in Ryoma's bedroom. After Ryoma's death, this weapon was not qualified to be buried with Ryoma and was lost. Master, I'm almost rusting. Where are you? Please wield me to slash that giant dragon. Price, 1,100 paradise coins. This item is a rule item and can be brought out of the One Piece world. Ryoma was a big deal, a strong man in the world of One Piece. Perhaps even the world's #1 swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk, may not be stronger than him. How could the sword used by such a strong man when he was young be weak? Sue even suspected that if this /dragon flash had not been damaged, it might be a green, or even a blue weapon. That's why Sue insisted on getting this knife even if it meant having a falling out with Hank. Fortunately, the two didn't have a falling out, and this fake friendship could last for a while. You're lucky, kid. This knife was confiscated from a group of pirates. Besides me, few people know that this knife is a treasure. If I didn't use a knife, and there was a dead rule in the warehouse that you can't choose a second weapon, I would have taken this knife a long time ago. Sue smiled and didn't say anything, just put the /dragon flash on his waist. With a knife on him, his combat power increased significantly, which made him feel a little more secure. Let's go, there's a big event happening in 2 days, and we can't be idle then. Hank sighed as if he was worried about something. What's happening? Give me a heads up so I can prepare. In half a month, the world nobles, the celestial dragons, will be inspecting the Goa kingdom. So the day after tomorrow, we have to clean up the junk terminal.